Alright, so picking immediately up from where we left off in chapter 61, this is taking place after the whole Adamus reveal, and we see Hades just slice open his chest. And for some reason, this is being called chapter 61 part 2 or 61.2, which also means that the chapter 63 that we also got for April is actually just chapter 62. And there's no real explanation for this, right? I mean, we did get to see a preview this month for the 15th volume that'll be coming out sometime over there in Japan too, so I'm just gonna assume this was probably for that or for volume 14. I'm not really sure because if I remember correctly, I know we usually get 2 chapters released when there's a new volume coming out. It's occasional, but I guess that could help explain why we didn't just get chapter 61 in full 2 months ago. But anyway, because this is just the second half to chapter 61, we're now seeing one of the best chapters in this entire round so far, I think. I mean, I knew what was gonna happen since I went over the spoilers in one of my videos, but just seeing Hades get his shine, and not only that, we also got a huge reveal here about his true ability. So overall, there was just so many good moments this chapter. Alright, so after we see Hades, then we also see Chin's reaction to this. He's asking himself here, why would Hades inflict so much damage to himself? So I was really curious coming into this chapter on what Chin's reaction was going to be to this, because now that he knows and senses how much pain and can feel the amount of damage he just saw Hades take, I was wondering how that would affect him physically, if at all. But I guess because he's mastered his chi sight and learned to live with his sight condition, it makes sense that he wouldn't be so heavily affected even after seeing Hades cut his own chest. Or maybe that just depends, right? Because unless Hades just has insane durability, I don't really see him using self-injury again, because like we find out later in this chapter, his blood is actually very precious. But we're also seeing Hades being pushed to his very limit here, so who knows? And he actually reminds me a lot of Heracles in that sense, right? Because just like Heracles, it was his tattoos that gave him more power, but also took away some of his life force. And just like we find out later in this chapter, Hades and his blood work together while also using his life force. And again, just like Heracles, Hades is fighting for some heroic and noble-like purpose. So Hades then rushes at Chin here. Chin tries to counter again like always by using his crossbow form, but because Hades just has so much blood on him now, he's able to essentially time when the air bullets make contact with his blood and negate them entirely. And this is probably the most interesting part for me, because we're literally seeing Chin shoot at the crux of his chi where Hades puts all his force into his attack, but somehow Hades is able to redirect the air bullet so as to not take the full blow. Because I imagine that even though it didn't hit exactly like how Chin wanted it to make contact, it just begs the question now how fast Hades has to be to do this, especially because he didn't even see it coming but could redirect it anyway. And it's somewhat ironic because it's just like chapter 56 where Hades meets Chin for the first time, and even though Chin still had his blindfold on, he was still able to deflect and then redirect the first attack from Hades. But getting back to the chapter, after Hades is able to successfully avoid the counter from Chin, he then also changes his attack in just the last moment, right? And it's just like Hemdall says, he changes his thrust into a downward swing in the last moment, and this is what happens right after Hades redirects his air bullet. And when it comes to some of the best fights in Ragnarok, I think round 7 is really gonna be among my favorite rounds. I just love the fight choreography so much, especially after what we learn later on about Hades and his blood. It's like I said earlier, this has to be one of the best chapters in this round so far, I think. And again, because I think the fight choreography is one of the main highlights for round 7, it's interesting seeing how Hades and Chin just stand out from the rest. Like, even though Hades was able to redirect Chin's counter, he also then changed his attack on the way down and Chin was still able to dodge it. And I know a lot of the community really thinks the first half of this fight so far was pretty much only about Chin, but I think as a fight, it's been really consistent. They're both coming up with answers to each of their counters, so it's been fairly competitive, I think. So after Chin dodges his attack, Hades just tells him the truth himself. He says, once I can tell when that attack has hit, it is nothing more than air. And now that I found a way to counter your disruption of chi, you pose no threat to me. So just like I said, he's able to time what he does exactly when the air bullet makes contact with his blood. It's not able to do anything since it's not hitting any points of chi. And then we're seeing Ares and Hermes. Ares assumes that Hades is only planning to counter Chin's crossbow form, but then Hermes tells him that there's actually more to Hades' blood than he knows. Alright, so this is where we get the big reveal. We're seeing his bident covered in blood, and then we're seeing Zeus tell Ares here. He says, yes, Hades' blood is not simply blood. And then we see Hades talking. He's looking at his bident and says, so it's finally complete. And right when he says this, he yells for it to assemble, and suddenly the 2 spear tips just flare out into 5 separate crystal-like things. I'm not really sure what to call them, but as Chin's watching this happen, we can see it from his perspective that Hades isn't showing any stars or points of chi at all. So if I had to guess, it's probably telling us that when Hades manipulates his blood or is in the state of it, his center of power is just overwhelming. Now, I could be wrong about that. It could just be Hades suddenly found a way to hide his chi. I have no idea, but now it's like Hades doesn't even need to counter his air bullets, because now that Chin just doesn't see his points of chi, there's nothing for Hades to dodge if Chin doesn't shoot. So while this whole transformation is going down with his Biden, Zeus then explains it to Ares here. He says, Hades' blood, otherwise known as Pluto Ichor, is a special substance. Any divine weapon that his blood spills upon harbors Hades' life force and becomes even more powerful, but naturally. If his life force is completely drained, he'll die. So there's a lot going on here, because it's implied that by using his blood, Hades was waiting for his Biden to gather as much as it needed to then go into its next form. And this is really interesting because it's not like Chin is the brawler type, right? He's not looking to see blood fly only for the fun of it, so it just makes even more sense why Hades felt like he had to cut open his chest. Because instead of waiting on Chin, he could just speed the process up himself with self-injury, and it almost works like a trade, right? So by trading his blood, Hades is able to transform any divine weapon and make it even more powerful. But just like Heracles' tattoos in round 4, he'll eventually die if he reaches his limit. So just like Chin's eyes, Hades has a very special gift with a very special drawback. And when we see it in its full form, it's named Four-Blooded Spear of Destiny Ichor Desmos. So named four-blooded after the four brothers, we're seeing his spear with all of its 5 points coming to a single point now. And I love that when he's ready to set up his next attack, you can see the gusts of winds that surround Hades when he tells Chin, he says, King of Men, this is my trump card. And his next attack is called Bloodlet Dawn Ichor Eos. It's pretty much just a single thrust. It's nothing too insane on its own, right? But it's the power behind it that makes it so dangerous. So as he's rushing at Chin, we can see Chin starting to prepare himself. He lifts his hands in the way and starts to call for the heavenly hand of defense, but right when it's supposed to absorb the attack, the armor just shatters instantly. But even more than that, Hades straight up cuts off 2 of his fingers in the process. And Chin's reaction to this is so accurate, but it looks like Hades also managed to disable most of his entire left arm with this attack. And I love this double page spread. I wish we got to see more double page spreads in Ragnarok, but when you see it here, you notice the armor on his left side go flying off. And later on, you can see what remains is mostly on his right side now. So even if it's not clear if he can still use his left arm, I think this means we're just bound to see Chin use his sword form now, but it's really not looking too good for Chin, right? Because on top of losing 2 of his fingers and the damage taken on his Volund, he can't even see the stars or the points of chi anymore in Hades, so he's at a complete disadvantage. So after being blown backwards, Chin stumbles for the most part, but he's able to get away with this pretty safely, I think, right? I mean, considering that Hades used his blood and transformed his Biden into an even more dangerous weapon, it just sounds like Chin should be dead by now, but somehow he survived. But again, I wouldn't say Chin's on the winning side either. This is getting really competitive on both ends. And with Adamus and Zeus watching, we get to the very end of the chapter. Hades says, I cannot lose. As their elder brother, I shan't be defeated. Alright, so if you're new to my channel, you probably don't know, but I already went over the spoilers for the next chapter in a separate video, so if you want to hear my thoughts on that, I'll leave a link to it down below. But of course, like always, I will be reviewing chapter 62 when it's finally translated, or chapter 63, whatever you want to call it. But overall, this was a solid chapter, and after thinking about it for some time while I was waiting to get this chapter translated, I honestly think this might end up being my favorite round. I really think that. Of course, the ending is really gonna make or break it for me, but in all honesty, this is just an amazing round, and I just can't wait to talk about the next chapter with you guys. But that's gonna be the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked what I had to say, then please leave a like. I'd greatly appreciate it, and feel free to let me know in the comments what you think, anything you agreed or disagreed with. And again, if you're interested in more Record of Ragnarok, then make sure you subscribe. I'll be doing more videos here on the channel like always. And yeah, again, thank you so much for watching, guys. Have a great day.